signed in. If you guys have any questions, you can find me. Well, if you have any questions concerning this equipment, these are the guys for you. So, having said that, this is Brian and Fortino from All-O-Matic. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Brian.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Brian. This is not going to be very formal. If you're looking for formal, you look somewhere. I'm not that guy. I live in the real world with everybody else. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to break the ice a little bit. Who are you and who you work for, if you don't mind?
Roberto, Arona, Empire.
Empire family.
Johnny, JD Enterprise.
Frank, yesterday.
Yesterday, I figured that one. That's me.
Robert Starkey, yesterday.
Okay.
Jason, worked for a little company called Premier Door out of Tyler.
Okay.
Malcolm, and for Bancroft and Sons.
Okay.
Josh Self, WW Cannon.
Joe Hernandez, WW Cannon.
Kim, Babs Distributing.
Right on. Okay. I'm the regional sales manager for All-O-Matic, and I live in New Orleans. But I probably spend 370 days a year in Texas, I think. So I'm here quite a lot. You got my card. The number on there is 818 number. That's the factory in California. The cell phone number is mine. You can always call that number. It's the only phone I have. If it rings, I answer it. It's important enough for you to call. It's important enough for me to answer. That being said, the guys in California aren't attached to the phone system at the office all night like I am attached to mine. So if you call the office in California, it's they're open from 9 a.m. local time to 5:30 local time. And if you call our office, unlike a lot of other companies, a real human answers the phone. Sometimes it's him. And every human who answers the phone can do tech support. Every single one. So we encourage people to call us. We like when you guys call us in the field. Take some burden off of these guys here. It doesn't interrupt anybody's relationship. And you can maybe literally talk to the guy who thinks all this stuff up. He answers the phone too. So, how many of y'all deal with All-O-Matic on a regular basis? One guy. Newbies. Awesome. Anyway, a couple things. You got some paperwork in front of you. There's a blue one. It's got most of our operators in it with all the specs, capabilities, what they do. If it's red, it's a DC operator. If it's blue, it's an AC operator. If you're looking at an operator, red board is DC, white board is AC. Oh, no, not at all. Hang on. So, we also have these cut sheets out. If you notice, that board is yellow. It's also DC, but it's 36 volts. These are monsters. We'll talk about that in a second. So, because most of y'all are not familiar with All-O-Matic too much, I'll talk a little bit, and then I'll turn the technical stuff over to Fortino. I've been doing this a long time. I put my first gate operator in 1993 in the field, so I came from where you guys live. It's hot, it's miserable. You don't want to be out there any longer than you have to. So you want to do it, get it done, and move on. That being said, our operators are probably the simplest, old school type operators out there. There's no programming on the boards except for the actuator, because there's a built-in 7-day timer in the board. It's the only board that has actual programming. Everything on these boards is dip switches and pods. Very simple. It has all the modern technology in it. It's smart, but you don't have to spend a day in the sun pushing buttons to make it work right. Old school limit switches. It's got a brushless DC motor, which they almost don't fail. They were developed for NASA for a space program. So, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. But they're good, solid operators. They're all made in the USA. They're simple. Simple is hard to beat. If you need an operator that'll make coffee, you get on the internet, you can order your groceries through it. This is not the one. But if you want the gate to open and close all day, this is the one you want.
It will work without safety.
Yes, we'll talk about that too. You know, he's going to talk about the new UL stuff that comes out next month. Everybody's stuff is changing. Ours is already ready for it. It's just a firmware change, but he's going to go into that and see writes the programs too. So, We have everything from a residential actuator all the way up to these heavy duties on these papers here. This one's slider will do 100 foot long, 8,000 pounds. If there's anything in between there that you need to swing or slide, we can figure that out.
100 foot.
100 feet. Or 100 foot, 3,000 pounds, but you can do that 24 inches a second. So you can only have to order it that way. It's not changeable in the field. One of the things we do is our warranty on our boards never goes away. As long as the board is not destroyed and we can repair it, we'll honor it. And you can get it swapped out or advanced replaced through Boutte. So if you have a board operator that you didn't put in and it's an AC board from 1999, and the board's still fixable, I'll give you an updated it, we'll fix that board and send it back, or the boards are very inexpensive anyway. If you have
So
to
you're
replace
saying
it.
last time on?
Yes, as long as we can repair it. At some point, the pieces on the board won't be made anymore, the chips, the stuff like that. Some of the first generation boards you just can't fix because they don't make the parts. But if we can repair it, we'll honor it, warranty it, we'll fix it and send it back to you. Nobody else does that I know of. So, anybody got any questions? Again, this is informal, man. Like, just talk over me, throw stuff at me. It doesn't matter. Just get my attention and let it pass. Talk.
Do y'all have operators for like the whole gates?
Yes. Yeah, all of our operators, as they are, can be master slave. It's a 2-wire connection with a ground between them. And it's, there's not a separate slave operator. It's a standard operator. It's just a dip switch on each board, one's master, one's slave. And you hook all your devices on the master side, and the other side knows what to
So is there a fee to the repair for the board? Will there be a fee for the repair of the board?
do. Not if we can fix it. If we can fix it, it's free. And we
The
do
only
it.
thing you gotta do is just pay the freight going to our office.
We work with the distributors. We try to make sure our distributors have boards on the shelf. If you have a board or a problem, we encourage you and really want you, please, just call our tech support. Call our guys. They'll verify, they'll go through some stuff and check some things and make sure the board is bad. And they'll give you an RMA number on the phone if it is. Call Bob's, I need a board. You can bring the bad board in, get his new board or refurbished board, whatever it is, and go back on your way, and Bob's will send in the bad one and deal with that, or go back on his shelf. So, and there's no charge to you for that. Shouldn't be. Everybody got a pen and a scratch pad? All right, go ahead and everybody get screwdrivers, since y'all played in the sun all day. These are handy.
So since Ryan already went through his introduction and you guys still seem to have questions for him, I'm going to take over and tell you guys good morning. My name is Fortino. I do the engineering for the company. I do design the All-O-Matic operators. And ever since I started designing the operators, I always had installers in mind, always looking to see what would make things easier for you guys. So if you guys get a chance to take a look at the operators, you'll see the simplicity and how simple it is for you guys to work on these operators. From initial installations to service, very simple, and that's one thing I will continue to do when designing new operators. Today, the main thing I want to talk about, I don't know if you guys are aware of the new UL 2018. It seems like a deja vu, 2016, right? But back in 2016, what we decided to do is use the normally closed method to monitor the safety devices or dropping the protection devices for edges or for eyes. And the reason we chose that is because also, keeping you guys in mind, understanding the 4Y is just a relay, normally open, normally close. You didn't have to learn anything other than just connect it to the new connector on our boards. So back then, the new requirement, and really this requirement was from 2000, to have 2 entrapment devices, or protection devices in each entrapment zone. The difference in 2016 is that they force the manufacturer to design the product to require those devices before functioning normally. But the standard was from the 2000s, 2002 already. Now, 2016, what's that?
Got 2 new guys coming in.
Okay. 2016 required those 2, but the standard said if there was no entrapment zone, 1 was not required. So what I did is on the closed cycle, I required 1 4Y or edge for the operator to work automatically at the close. But on the open side, if there was no entrapment zone, 1 was not required. And if the board didn't detect 1 device on the open side, it assumed 1 was not required to be able to work normally. Now, 2018, they're forcing, again, now to have on the sliders, to have 1 4Y or edge on the closed cycle, 1 on the open cycle. So that's a new requirement for 2018. The installers, you guys, now on sliders need to install 1 device on the open and 1 on the close, making it a little bit more difficult for you guys to compete, and end users are going to be seeing this as not affordable sometimes. But the main purpose of this is to keep operators and gates safer. You don't want to have accidents and injure people with unsafe gates. Now, one question I get is UL325 a law or required by law? And the short answer is no, this is just a standard, it's not a law. Manufacturers choose to opt in, to meet and comply with the standards, but it is not a law that requires you guys to have all these devices connected. But if you do want to be compliant with the 325 standard, you must use those devices and install in every entrapment zone. Now, some cities or states, counties, they do require for gate installations to be UL325 compliant.
Louisiana,
In those cases,
Nevada.
there's no way around it. You have to use those devices. So you got to understand the applications when you talk to your clients. Yes.
If we decide not to use the devices, can the board be bypassed?
Yes.
So it will work without the device connected?
Let's leave that to the end, and I'll explain that to you guys. I can't provide anything on paper, but I can explain to you guys, a way to do it to change the firmware modes. Let's see. Now, another question I get: what's ETL? Why aren't you UL approved? And what ETL is just a lab that does its testing for UL standards, the same way UL does. If you have an ETL label or UL label, it's the same thing. We are approved and have been tested to meet and be in compliance with that standard. So there's no difference when you see an ETL or a UL label. So ETL, UL label means just that they have been tested, have through the lab, and were found, the product was found to be in compliance with the standard. So, as I was saying earlier, the changes for this year are mainly on the sliders. They just change the way the manufacturers design the product, so that the operators don't run normally unless you have the devices connected to the operators. So for sliders, you are required to do that. I'm talking about the operator, so when I say the operator, just letting you know that it will require one for it to work normally. I'm not saying that that's just one, it's gonna make the job compliant. Because you need to figure out where your entrapment zones are. So if you have more entrapment zones and you need to be compliant with UL325 for the installation, you must install the device in every entrapment zone. But for the operator, for it to work, normally it only requires one in the open, one in the close for the sliders. For swingers, the standard says there's an exception. And the exception is if there's no entrapment zone on the open direction for the swingers, the drop-in protection device is not required. So the boards on those swing operators will work the same as they have been since 2016. It'll be a little confusing for you guys to understand which board is which. We'll do our best to identify the boards with the serial numbers for you guys to see which one is slider, swinger. So I'll provide some information to Boutte, and he'll forward that information to you guys, just to have an easier understanding of which board is which. And at the end, I'll explain the sequence of.
Another question.
Yes.
Are you saying that swingers don't need an entrapment device in either direction?
The swing only on the close. Because
On
on the
the
close, for sure, there's going to be an entrapment zone between the catching post and the tip of the gate. So the swingers will work the same as 2016 operators. One photo line in close direction. So if the operator does not detect any dropping devices, it will only work by constant pressure. You can install a switch, push button to force the gate either open or close. That is a suggestion for every job. In case those dropping devices fail, you don't want to have your client locked in their property. You want them to have access to that switch to override those devices and be able to open the gate to get out or close the gate for security. That's one thing that you should add into your bids when you're selling a job, and explain to customers if these devices fail, here's where you need to go and open the gate. So it would, if you just press and release, the board will tell you there's a fault, meaning there's no devices connected. So in those cases, you have to have a switch if you don't need to, or if the devices fail. This will start in August 1st, 2018. And again, only the sliders will be affected, will work different than the current versions. If you guys have any questions, I encourage you guys to just give us a call. If you're confused with the boards, don't know which board is which, just give us a call, we'll help you. And once you guys work with this a couple times, you guys will have a good understanding. Any questions so far about this, the new devices and anything?
So no matter if there's an entrapment zone on the open cycle or not, you have to have a photo cell?
On the sliders, yes. They think that there's never no entrapment zone on the sliders.
Yeah.
So you're going to be forced to have one to be compliant with UL325. Actually, we were one of the first ones back in 2016 to just allow the operator to work with just the closed device. Because of us, they made the change and now forced us again to update it. So the way, I'm just going to explain which what they do, if the dropping zone is triggered, or the dropping device, the monitor open input, what it will do is it will stop the gate. Let's say the gate is opening, the open device is triggered, the gate will stop, reverse a couple feet, and stop again and wait for another signal. If you give it another signal twice, it will do the same thing again. It will stop and reverse the feet. For the close, if it's closing, you block the beam or hit the edge, the gate will stop and reverse all the way open. And again, if the device is not detected, we are monitoring the device by cycling the power on initial of the cycle. If one is not detected, you'll see a light, one fault. Now, this is one of the main calls we get about photo eyes, either not responding. And when you see monitor fault light and you know that there is a photo eye connected or an edge, one, you got to double check, make sure that the wiring is correct. We have a dedicated power for those devices. You got to make sure it's a MON 1224 volt. If you connect it on the regular 12 or 24 volt auxiliary power, the board will show you as fault because we are not seeing the change from the photo eye or the edge. So first thing is check the wiring, make sure it's in the right connector. Second, make sure that the photo eye is aligned either with a receiver or a transmitter or a reflector. Monday we got a call. Says I got the photo eye working right, it's got the lights on, but the gate won't work. Well, he didn't put a reflector on the other side of the driveway. So you gotta make sure there's a reflector if it's a retro-reflective photo eye. And on the blue beam, make sure they're aligned. Because that's one of the, again, that's one of the main calls that we get. The photo eye not being wired properly, aligned or misaligned. So it'll save you some time just to go through your wiring and your alignment of the photo eye. So, I'm repeating myself, but I want to make sure that you guys understand all our operators are ETL listed, meaning they are UL325 compliant. Let's see. So a new thing with UL325, some manufacturers were including resistors, jumpers, switches to bypass that. And the UL325 does not allow that on those boards. That can easily allow you to just bypass it. So if you were used to doing that on some of those operators, coming this 2018, if they are UL or ETL listed, those operators are not going to have those options for you guys to just. And I mean, in my opinion, you guys should use as much safety on gates. If you choose, we will have a way for you guys to change modes. And basically, just the reason I did that is to allow you guys to use those boards in older machines before 2016. Now, we encourage you guys to use all UL or ETL listed operators. Like Brian said, we are already approved and compliant with 2018. I'm just waiting for August 1st to start manufacturing those operators with the new changes. But we have gone through all the testing. We are all good to go, and you guys will be receiving those pretty soon. So the reason I suggest to have as much safety as possible, there has been incidents in the recent years. The last one we have seen was in Vegas. A kid got killed by a swing gate. Now the installation was not a normal installation. It was something that should have never been done. But they did it. This is some information on that case. If you see, the arm is going through that slot on that fence line. It's a little bit difficult to see.
Yes.
The kid was trying to get through that slot. His friend drove over the loop with a bicycle. The gate started opening, and the kid just got crushed. Yeah. So it's very important just to keep in mind, safety. Always see where things could go wrong and injure, innocent kids or any person that could be around the gate. So, in that group of papers I gave you a sheet. As I mentioned, the 4Ys are one of the main calls we get. Either, yes.
Can I ask you about the boy that got in the trap there?
Yes.
How would you protect that particular area?
Well, I would never put a hole through that fence to run the arm through there. That's just not safe. Now you can blame the parents like, where's the kid? It was an 8-year-old kid. You can blame the parents like, where's the kid?
Could you install a beam to protect that area?
Yes, you can. You can install a beam to prevent the gate movement.
Without the arm
yes.
getting into the beam through that hole in the fence.
Yes. But yeah, there is ways, but in my opinion, I would never do an installation like that. So there's a sheet with a list of 4Ys. We do include that sheet right in front of the control box. And the reason is a lot of you guys don't open the manual. And I'm not saying I was just you guys specifically, but a lot of the installers don't like to open the manual, and they give us a call. With this list, you'll see all the devices that are approved and tested with our operators. It gives you wire by wire how to connect it to our operators. Makes your job a lot easier. You don't have to open either the 4Y or the R manual. You just look at that, hook it up, and you'll get it going real quick. You'll save a lot of time. But once we have more success with are the EMX NIR 50s. Those are the inexpensive small 4Ys with a reflector. The All-O-Matic and the Amrons. On the edges, the wireless edges, the one that has been more reliable for us is also the EMX UL200. Those seem to be the ones with least problems. So if you guys prefer other brands, and they're on the list, you're welcome to use them if you haven't experienced any problems with those. But if you have, these are good options for you guys to use. The EMX NIR, the All-O-Matic, and the Amron. Again, we are using normally close termination. We do not, or you do not use or need to use a resistor. That's another question we get. Where do I put the resistor? You do not need a resistor in our operator. All you need is just the wire off of the 4Y, which is a normally close contact, straight into the board, and that's all you need. Now, if you have a wired edge, not wireless, what you will need to do is buy a module to convert the 10K edge into normally close. And that is the Miller Edge GM 104. It's just a little module, maybe an 1.25 by 1.25 square. You connect your edge into that, it will give you the 3 wires to connect to our board, which will be the power and the normally closed output. That should be also on the list. Gen 104 for wired edges. So, as I said, we do have dedicated power for the entrapment devices. On the DC boards, it will say MON 1224 volt DC. You have to use that. If you don't use that as power for those entrapment devices, it will see it as fault. It will not work. The AC, just say MON 24 volt DC. The same thing. Very simple wiring. You got your power, MON 20, the positive, MON 12 or 24. Your relay and power negative go together into common. And then if it's a closed device, you go and use an open close into MON close, or if it's an open device, you connect it to MON open. Don't confuse normally open, normally close. So I have seen customers connect the normally open to MON open and normally close and MON close. That would not work. So you just use a normally close wire off of each device into the either MON close or MON open, not both. So is that simple enough for you guys, or? Very simple. You can use 4 wires that have been in. It becomes handy in not every job, but in some jobs where you already have 4 wires and you're just replacing the operator. Some of those 4 wires might work, and you might not have to sell the customer a new 4 wire. That's another reason why we did the normally close, so you can use some of those older 4 wires that have the normally close. So this is just the same thing as the sheet you have. Just gives you the list of tested devices that comply with UL325. Now as we say, we need 2 independent entrapment protection devices. One is integrated in the operators, so it's the current sensing. If you have no 4 wires, or the 4 wire is not being blocked and still bumps into an object, an obstruction, the machine will respond to that and still protect whatever it is that hit. Very simple. We included 2 independent adjustments, one for the open, one for the close. This becomes handy on gates that either have more resistance in one direction than the other. This allows you to adjust and fine-tune the sensitivity for each direction without having to compromise the other. We are a little different than most manufacturers. Usually, people tell me that we are reversed or backwards from. So, more sensitivity, or the most sensitive, will be all the way counterclockwise. The least sensitive, or more force, will be all the way clockwise, all the way to the right. The way, or the easiest way to test it is, or to adjust it, as the gate is running open or close, start turning that counterclockwise slowly. Once it stops, just turn it back a quarter of a turn. Once you have that, give it a signal again, test it. Just make sure it's not stopped with your resistance, with your hand, or you just put your shoulder against it. Just be sure that you're safe, not between the entrapment zone. But you should test it. You don't want to leave it too sensitive, because then a small bump in the track or a rock in the track will trigger it and make it fail. So you got to make sure that it's not too sensitive or too strong that it's not going to stop on an obstruction. We highly suggest or recommend to sell a service contract, just to go back to job and do preventive maintenance every 6 months. Check the adjustment, make sure it's still good, because hardware, the gate changes, wears out, becomes more, adds more resistance to the operator. So you might have to decrease the sensitivity to allow the gate to still function without problems. So we recommend to sell those preventive maintenance contracts to go twice a year and make sure everything works properly. Not just the operator, but the gate, hardware, and everything else in there. So this is just the same thing on the AC. On the AC boards, we do have machines with 1 horse up to 1 horsepower. If you have a board, a replacement board, you got to make sure that the jumper setting is in the right position. If you look on the right, you'll see a chart. The jumper needs to be set for the right operator or motor before putting it in and be able to adjust the ELD. If you don't change that, you might have a too sensitive ELD or not sensitive enough to respond to the obstruction. So that's an extra step you got to do. Make sure you check before adjusting the ELDs on the AC machines. Now, as Brian mentioned, we have DC machines, and AC machines. One of the things that sets us apart from most other manufacturers on the DC line is that, let me back up. One of the reasons we designed this, we saw a trend of people looking for more battery backup, body operated gate operators. We looked at all the manufacturers that had those, saw all the advantages, many advantages on battery backup operators. You have smooth start, stop operation. You got battery backup, case of power failure. But we wanted to check what the problems they had, what problems they had to correct them and design a better product. We found brushless DC motors. The difference with brushless versus the conventional DC motors is that, as the name of the motors, brushless, lacks the brushes. There's no brushes to wear out. Nothing in the motor is basically maintenance free. And that was one of the main issues with the rest of the manufacturers that at that time were manufacturing DC operators, that the brushes would wear out, they would quit after 6 months or 3 years, depending on the application. So we found and learned that the brushless DC was the solution for all of those problems, and at the same time get all the advantages that DC motors had, which was the soft start, soft stop. This is just a comparison. Brushless DC are highly reliable. The brush DC, due to the brushes, they're less reliable. The other advantage of the brushes is that they're more efficient because we are eliminating the friction of those brushes. So we are able to get higher efficiency, have better power transfer from the electric power into the mechanical output. We got higher starting torque than the DC. We have constant torque in low and high speeds, whereas the DC brush motors, they tend to have less torque at higher speeds and lower speeds because they rely more in inertia. If the motor slows down, it's difficult for it to maintain torque. Whereas the brushless is not relying on those brushes, commutators. So you got a much better motor. The life on brushless motors is 10 to 20,000 hours. This is running 1,000 hours, so if you divide 20,000 hours into how long it takes to open one cycle, that will give you how many cycles. So you can get a couple million cycles with a brushless DC motor, depending on the length of the gate. Whereas the brush motors only give you 2 to 5,000 hours very big difference. Also, because of the lack of brushes, we are able to make those motors much smaller. So the power to weight ratio, it's much higher on the brushes. You got bulkier motors on the brush type. And one of my favorite advantages is that brushless DC motors are way more efficient in heat dissipation. Not only brush motors, but also AC motors. You guys will get a chance to walk around and then see the case of the motor. The brushless motor uses the case as a sink or thermal dissipation. I always recommend to use brushes or these RDC operators for high cycle applications. You got a big gated community where you're going to have the gate non-stop. Brushless DC will not fail for you. They will give you the best performance than anything else out there, AC or DC. Our brushless motors will be the perfect fit for those type of applications. We got real fast response on acceleration. This is making the operator much smoother on startup and slow down before hitting the limit. Prolonging the life on your gate hardware. You're not gonna have, I don't know if you guys have experienced connected links breaking and then having the chain on the ground. This would definitely relieve a lot of that tension on those type of hardware, chain bolts. There is no RF interference, no radio frequency being generated by the DC motor, brushless DC motor, where the brush motor, once the brushes start wearing out, you got all the dust built up inside the motor. But that dust creates electrical noise that could affect one of your other accessories that you have in the unit. It could be a loop detector, it could be your photo eyes. With our brushless DC motors, that problem has been eliminated. I don't know if you guys have experienced anything with DC motors where you have a phantom problem, you don't know what it is. It could be all the dust and the electrical noise coming out of those motors. We have no sparking, so in places where are sensitive, you got a refinery where you can't have anything that could cause an explosion, with a spark coming from the motor. With brushless, there's no mechanical contact on anything, or no commutator. It's all electrical, electronic. And smaller size for the same amount of power on those motors. Any questions on brushless motors? No? See, so this is what I was talking about on the brush motors. The brush motors have the commutator, which is that copper part in the center. That's where the brushes are riding on. You see that stuff in the back? It's all dust that I pull out of that same motor case. All that dust is what builds up in that motor and causes all those issues with electrical noise. Also, audible noise. It starts squeaking. You got the bearings with all the dust. So you can replace brushes, but it's not going to solve an issue. It'll make the life of the brush maybe a third of the original one. So you're going to constantly have to replace brushes with those type of motors. The commutator also wears out as the brushes rub against them. That part you're not going to be able to fix. You're going to have to replace the whole motor. So there is really no advantages of using a brush DC. Here's the cases of our motors. If you see, you got the fins. Those fins are used to dissipate the heat much more efficient. So that's one of the reasons that I recommend these operators on high cycle gates. You will not have a problem, and you will have battery backup, so you can offer a much better, value for your customers and have less failures. As Brian was saying, these motors were originally designed for NASA to go out of space. Now they are used in the military for this type of crafts. And the reason they use this because of the reliability. They're not going to fail. That's what they require to have one in the moon or Mars when they send one. They can't afford for those motors to fail and have those vehicles stop working. Another industry where this is highly used is now with the DC or electric vehicles. That's what they're going to be using brushless DC motors because they can't afford to have brushes wear out in a car. So the last one is the medical field. Due to also reliability, you can't have life support fail on you. So now I'm going to go through some of the diagnostics. When you're installing and doing service to the operators, one thing I always repeat and repeat, always pay attention to LEDs. These LEDs are indicating you what's happening with the board, with the operator. They will tell you if you have a problem, they will tell you what is causing the problem. Very important to have and pay attention to these LEDs. Don't take it for granted. They will help you figure out some issues. So we have way more lights than some of the other manufacturers. For the same reason, I want you guys to have it easy and see what's going on with the board. You got a device connected and you don't have a light, it will tell you that that device is not or is activated. You wouldn't be able to figure it out. LEDs will tell you everything that's active. If the gate is fully open and stock open, it won't close. The LED will tell you what's holding it open. So very important to have an eye on these lights when you're working with these operators. So I got the mode light. It's one of the diagnostics lights that I use for the motor and also for the UL mode versions. If it blinks twice every 2 seconds, if it blinks once every 2 seconds, there is a problem. There is a problem with the motor hole sensors. That motor has a set of sensors in the back of it to tell us the position of it. And if there is a problem, this light will give you a blink every 2 seconds. In that case, either check and make sure that the harness of those sensors is connected. If it is connected properly and still getting that, either there's going to be a problem with the board or the motor. So when you see those LEDs, maybe just give us a call and we'll help you through diagnostics and get it going as soon as possible. Twice means there's an overload. Meaning the gate is either too heavy or the wheels are not spinning. You're dragging the gate on a slider. If it blinks 3 times, this one, I had this added after the other two. The two mainly on sliders. When you set the limits, don't set the limit to stop right against the post or slamming into the post. Make sure you leave at least ½ inch before hitting the post. So what this 3 blink does is if the gate comes, or you set the limit too close to the post, sometimes the gate hits the post, the limit doesn't trigger. It just keeps there. At that point, the motor is running so slow that the current sensing doesn't respond as quick. But it will stop. It will stop and then give you the 3 blinks. If you see 3 blinks, like constantly every 3 or every 2 seconds, that means your limit is set too close to the post. So you just got to readjust the limits, make sure that it stops at least ½ inch away from the stop. That's something handy to have, when you have those issues. Then you got an LED for every input. You'll see the light on whenever that device is activated. Most of those are very common, and then you'll know what they are and what's holding it, or what's keeping it on. Let's see. So we got a auto close timer. The timer light will blink as the gate is timing out to close. If you see the gate, the blinking light, the timer light blink too slow, that means one of the devices is holding the gate open or it's inactive, and it's not going to close if you see it blinking really slow. I'm not going to go through everything. We'll have questions. If you guys have any questions, I'll rather answer your questions with this type of application. All the LEDs. We do include 7 diff switches with different features. The timer, of course, is just self-explanatory. It's a timer for auto close. What the radio function does is allows the user